Is DFA a top tier hand cannon? Originally, we reviewed this hand cannon weeks ago in its normal form, but with Insight Terminus dropping DFAs this week, we finally got access to the Adept version of this hand cannon, and I have been saying all along that this hand cannon is much better than what it's being credited for. Now, personally, I wasn't able to actually land the God roll myself, despite a number of GM runs. Getting that 5 out of 5 roll is what we actually wanted to review. Big shout out to the gents, though, in today's video for allowing us to play with their DFA rolls. We also did some range testing on things like fragile focus, opening shot, do they stack, etc. And even though I'm going to give you my conclusion on where DFA sits amongst the top hand cannons, because believe me, we've got a lot of them. Allstringer, Palindrome, Cantata, Ias Luna, Ace of Spades. Hell, even Thorn has seen a resurgence. Hawkmoon. Without a doubt, there is a lot of competition, and that's not even all of it. What DFA presents, though, is being an Adept version 140 and being present in that kinetic slot. That's really what it presents. The only other hand cannon that can present that is, of course, the time-lost version of Fatebringer, which, by the way, is still a very good hand cannon. So believe me, the competition is stiff, man, but I still want to try to sell you on this hand cannon. First up, the obvious roll that we wanted to try right out the gate was a Perpetual Motion timed payload roll. Obviously, we wanted to boost that range up a little bit, so we had some range boosting perks, but Perpetual Motion is what really makes this hand cannon, despite it being a 140 adaptive, feel almost like a lightweight hand cannon. Essentially, after 2 seconds of continuously moving, you gain 5 stability, 5 handling, and 5 reload. And after 10 seconds of movement, which by the way, this still does persist even after a gunfight, you get 15 stability, 15 handling, and 15 reload. All wonderful benefits. Handling on this hand cannon is not my favorite, so that really helps. And stability has become so important when it comes to countering flinch. And that reload speed is 100% a necessity here on DFA, considering that the mag size is only 9. That is my biggest complaint. Well, I have one more complaint, but that's like a really big complaint I have when it comes to DFA. It's just that mag size is so small, which you don't have to rock accurized rounds if you hate that mag size so much. You can, of course, rock things like tactical mag just to increase that mag size just a little bit. But Perpetual Motion was very, very good for helping out with all of those stats. And pretty much what we saw from that particular roll was damage fall off beginning at 32.23 meters. That's not bad. If we were to stack on an Adept range mod, this would of course give us plus 10, and that would actually kick it up to almost 33.5 meters. Again, with the airborne accuracy changes, you can still rock things like Adept Icarus, which does give you plus 15 and your airborne effectiveness. But to be honest with you guys, I do not take to the air much anymore. Not unless I'm really specking out for it to begin with. I will say though that the airborne effectiveness by default here on DFA is still really good. I mean, you're still roughly looking at plus 18, which pretty much beats out all other hand cannons outside of Palindrome. And again, that's kind of like some of the benefits that these Adept weapons have is they're supposed to have better airborne effectiveness, so you can lean into that a little more, rocking that Adept Icarus. But remember, Adept Icarus no longer boosts range. As its secondary stat, it boosts handling. Now, time payload. I talked about the benefits of time payload before. Its ability to flinch opponents is really, really nice. I also said due to the fact that there's no damage fall off on that explosive round, it almost feels like every single shot has opening shots, and you don't have damage fall off when it comes to that explosive round, which is really nice. Again, at ranges, you can feel it taking effect and those shots landing with consistency. However, what I did come to find, being a 140 round per minute hand cannon, you're looking at a 0.87 time to kill value optimal and a very, very bad body shot TTK value of 1.73. Needless to say, guys, due to the fact that time payload takes literally milliseconds to take effect, there were times I died to a trait simply because it's a delayed explosive. It's not like explosive payload that's immediate damage, it's delayed. And considering that that 0.87 time to kill value is just slightly higher than a lot of other weapons, you do run into an issue where trades are very common with DFA and time payload. At least for me it was, which was annoying. Now, one thing that I found while playing with this roll, despite it being good, I realized like, man, DFA has 2 big drawbacks, actually 3. 1 being its max size. 2, I actually think it's one of the worst hand cannons when it comes to combating flinch, especially on the opening shot of an attack. And 3, DFA is arguably its worse at the opening shot of the attack. I don't know what it is, from aiming down sights or even beginning a gunfight, DFA struggles when it comes to landing that first crit unless you're just playing like a bot, aiming down sights and literally waiting for your opponent to put their face in your reticle. I don't like that. I like a hand cannon that immediately coming out of a sprint, boom, I can land a crit. Certain hand cannons can achieve that with ease. Granted, the playstyle surrounding hand cannons has changed considering the airborne changes, but even on the ground, I found that DFA struggled to land that first shot when coming from the hip to aiming down sights. And to correct this, we actually ended up trying out this roll right here. Perpetual Motion with opening shot. Now, opening shot grants you 20 aim assists for that first bullet. It also grants you 25 range. It also helps with those accuracy cones. Needless to say, that first shot, 9 times out of 10, man, if you've got decent enough aim, is going to be a crit. Now, this works beautifully when you're going from like a special weapon back to this hand cannon, especially like a sniper rifle, and you need to get that shot off real quick with this hand cannon. You can feel your reticle getting dragged onto your targets. Opening shot here was extremely nice, and considering that perpetual motion can proc even if the weapon is stowed. If you were to follow up after getting a special weapon kill back to this hand cannon, not only do you have that increase in accuracy, but you get the handling bumps there from perpetual motion. This role changed how I felt about DFA, because originally I was like, time payload is the way. But after playing with opening shot, which I know logically already seemed like the go-to option, it dawned on me though that this really is the option. Like, because of DFA's weaknesses on that initial shot, opening shot mitigates that issue and does so substantially, as well as the ginormous range bumps there. And we actually did a range test and just started to look at opening shot and where damage fall off actually begins. Opening shot actually cranks up our range for the first shot up to 35 meters. Granted, it'll drop right back down to like 31.5 meters, 32 meters, but it does crank it up to 35 meters on that first shot. And this is important because range definitely ties to reticle stickiness, which of course is going to affect whether or not that shot even lands, much less lands at full damage, and it being a crit. And if your playstyle is anything like mine, my first shot is the only real shot that needs to be at that extended range. I'm pushing up. Like, I normally am sliding or moving up, getting closer and closer to the enemy as the gunfight goes on. So even though the range does drop down after that first shot, by that point, I've closed the gap enough to where I'm still going to get that 3 tap in 0.87. Now, I know someone's going to ask, Cross, what about fragile focus? I got to say one thing, this perk annoys the piss out of me, simply because any little bit of damage that you receive, boom, you've lost it. Granted, it does give us roughly like 3 meters, 2.5 to 3 meters in range, as long as you are not taking damage. So if you're going up against people that are maybe engaging with your blueberries or your teammates, boom, you've got a range bump. And turns out fragile focus and opening shot does stack right here, and it was actually increasing our range up to 36 meters. Granted, you do start to run into caps, so the higher the range stat of a particular weapon, by default, the less benefits you're going to see here from fragile focus. Again, it just tacks on that plus 20 there in range. Now, my conclusion with this was that fragile focus was not the play. Perpetual motion is the thing here that's going to make this hand cannon feel good for you. And even when we compare it to other hand cannons, there is not many that has perpetual motion. You've got DFA, you've got IS Luna, and guys, as far as I know, those are your only hand cannons that can roll with perpetual, and that makes a big difference. It makes your weapon feel so much more fluid, and that stability bump is really, really nice now due to the recoil changes. Now, with that being said, I do need to just be realistic here about where DFA sits. Overall, its aim assist value is pretty much middle of the pack. Comes under a lot of our favorite hand cannons, outside, of course, Allstringer, which is kind of surprising, right? Allstringer is such a dominant hand cannon, yet it has one of the weaker aim assist values. Range, it also comes under just about every single hand cannon. And stability, it pretty much comes under every single hand cannon as well, outside of maybe Cantata. Its handling is also worse. Its reload speed is better, but it doesn't really matter because the mag size is already piss poor. Fellas, it's not looking good on the stat sheet. DFA does not have loaded stats. I feel like Bungie intentionally did this because they know that this is going to be an Adept weapon, and people are going to be able to take advantage of Adept mods to counter this. You're essentially giving yourself the same stats that you would get with these other legendary hand cannons by slotting an Adept stability or Adept range mod, or even an Adept handling mod. The problem is there are other legendary hand cannons that by default have better stats, and that's why perpetual motion really is a necessity here on DFA. Things that are working good for DFA are, number one, it comes with Vanguard Vindication, where you do regain health after kills, not by much, but still a slight bump, and Stunning Recovery, which is good for champions. That's going to be really nice with like a Vorpal roll or a timed payload roll with either triple tap or outlaw. Number two, it can land 3 taps like nobody's business. When you start to get the recoil direction of this weapon down, and you start to grasp where to reset your reticle, it will work wonders for you. However, there are times where DFA, it's almost like it forgets it's a weapon. Mid-gunfight, I'll just be like, yo, where are my shots going? Granted, it's been tough here lately, man. I feel like the connections have just been awful. So there are just times where shots just weren't connecting, and I don't know if that's a fault of DFA or if that's just a fault of servers. Who knows? On top of that, the Rumble playlist has suddenly become like the home for all cheaters. I don't really understand that, nor do I understand how cheaters have suddenly upticked, but that's a reality. There were times that I was extremely frustrated with DFA though, even with these god rolls. And then there were also times where I was like, whoa, this weapon is working phenomenally. It's hard drawing conclusions right now on certain hand cannons due to the fact that hand cannons feel so different in this environment with the airborne changes. How I used to play, where I would jump up and grab that jump shot, or I would slide over that rubble or those stairs and it would put me in the air just slightly for a little bit, but my shot was still true. Your playstyle can't really be that anymore, at least not as effectively. So in assessing my review here for DFA, does my frustrations lie with the hand cannon itself or with the state of the sandbox? And that one's a tough one for me. Now, I will admit I am biased when it comes to this hand cannon. It was one of my favorite hand cannons back in year 1 of Destiny 2. I will personally try to use it, but I understand its limitations. I understand that I probably need to rock max resilience when using this hand cannon because it combats flinch so poorly. I understand that I'm going to need opening shots to help with those inaccuracies on that first shot that DFA inherently has. And hands down, perpetual motion is an absolute must. Does this hand cannon beat out all the others? Look, man, in my heart, it does. On spreadsheets and in reality, I would still put it as a top 5 hand cannon, but the competition is stiff, man. Real stiff. Play with it yourself, guys. Give it a go. There are going to be moments where DFA, especially if you've got the 5 out of 5 God roll here on the Adept version, where it will surprise you. It'll blow you away. You'll be like, oh my God, Metah? And then there's going to be times where you're like, yo, this is garbage. And you just want to shard that thing right then and there. The issue is, in this sandbox, I feel that way about a lot of hand cannons. Just my thoughts, fellas. Let me know in the comments below what you think. A lot of great hand cannons out there. This one possesses some unique trait combinations. Yes, you can get perpetual motion on IS Luna, but then you would be giving up rangefinder. And I think most of us probably wanted an IS Luna with rangefinder. But understand the stats that things like perpetual motion is mitigating are stats that other hand cannons already have by default. I really wish Bungie, considering that this is a reused weapon, would have bumped those stats up a little more. You know, give it a little bit of love. Maybe a little more in that mag size, Bungie. It's a hard sell when you bring back an old weapon, and it's an even harder sell when you don't give it equivalent stats to our other top tier options we've been getting for the past couple years. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.